Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Feminine Fortune. Today, we're talking about one of the most powerful things I learned from one of my mentors, and it's this: what you believe, you prove. Okay, so what you're going to learn in this episode is, if this is true, which it is, how to identify what you are believing now that you don't even realize you're believing now, and what you can do to start consciously changing what you believe. Okay, so you can start consciously proving something different. We're also going to talk about how to take new actions from new beliefs, which of course means you'll get new results. In other words, stop doing the same thing and believing the same thing if you desire and expect different results. Okay, so like I said, what we're talking about today is what you believe, you prove. You might not realize it, but you are always, always, always at choice about what you make any given situation mean. This is so important because think about how many times a situation occurred and you actually made it mean something. You found out later that you misinterpreted the whole thing. It created a whole drama or misunderstanding, and then there was a mess and people had to apologize, and it all could have been avoided if people interpreted it differently. So why does this happen? Let's talk about why this happens. Let's talk about the facts of a situation versus your interpretation, because this is what it really all boils down to. In any given, like in any life moment, there's the facts of the situation, and then there's how you interpret it. And remember, what we're talking about here affects every area of your life, right? So here on Feminine Fortune, I'm here to help you increase your results, increase your sales, increase the way that you're able to take care of yourself and your family and the people you care about and future generations and the things that you want to give to in the world. And the way we have it in the way I have it in my life and with my clients and in my programs is that when you're a limitless lady, which is what I choose to be, which is what my clients choose to be, it's not just about results. It's not just about, making great sales, although yes, that's great. It's about having every area of your life work really well, your relationships, your family, everything. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's go ahead and dive in. You're going to want to really pay attention. Let's go ahead and dive in to how to distinguish the facts versus interpretation, and let's start to unpack this a little bit. Okay. So how does this even work? Where to even begin? Let's start here. Based on your subconscious filters. So you're actually at any given moment, you're intaking billions of bits of information from the world, every second. So how does your brain know what information to bring to your awareness for you to make interpretations about, make decisions on, that sort of thing? Well, it's based on your subconscious filters, which developed when you were a kid, when you were between the ages of 0 and 8, and you just didn't know any better. Okay. So you are actually, doesn't matter how old you are right now, you are the majority of what you're doing in your life and the way that you're thinking is filtering through lenses that you developed when you were between the ages of 0 and 8. Oh, that should be an aha moment for you. Think about that. What that means is that there are times in your life when you're actually making decisions, not as a 30-something, not as a 40-something, but as a freaking 8-year-old. Okay. So no shame in this. It's just a realization. Hopefully this is a great relieving, freeing aha moment of, wow, now that I have this awareness, I can do something different. So what you're going to want to do, and I'll go more into the practices on this and a little bit later in the episode, but just to give you a sneak peek, what you're going to want to do is to start to identify what your thoughts are, what your beliefs are, what are the things that are happening behind the scenes, what are these filters that are moving into the way that you are talking to yourself, right? Because you're talking to yourself. It's not like a disease. It's not like a problem. Like every human, we talk to ourselves, right? So the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you interpret things, and the actions that you take. Okay. And here's what's powerful. A lot of people don't realize this. You can choose your thoughts, and you can choose the way you talk to yourself and the actions that you take based on those thoughts as they come up. You can catch them. In the Bible, it talks about taking your thoughts captive. Taking your thoughts captive. It's realizing you can choose them, you can rearrange them, you can rewire them as they come up. And another, like, what feels like, once I say it, Captain Obvious moment, but it's going to be an aha moment for you, is you are not your thoughts. You are not your results. You are not your thoughts. You are a distinct entity. I believe that I'm a child of God. I believe that you are a child of God, and your thoughts have nothing to do with your inherent nature as being a completely worthy child of God. Okay. So yes, you can actually choose new thoughts. And like I said, we'll come back to this. I'm going to give you some real practices that you can use, you can implement, and you can start to change your life from the inside out. Turns into new results, turns into new outcomes because of the simple act of changing your thoughts. Okay. So remember, facts of a situation. There's facts of a situation. Like, for example, right now, at the time of this recording, we're in a bit of a recession. Okay. People's buying behaviors may have shifted. Inflation is increasing average household spend by something like $500 a month. Okay. And so now we have all the facts. Now there's your interpretation and the story that you make up about it and how you relate to it. Okay. Do you relate to it like, oh no, we're all effed and there's nothing we can do? It's like, and you're a victim to it. Or do you relate to it like, okay, there could be an opportunity here? Or an even better question than is there an opportunity is, where is the opportunity? Okay. Just side note, the questions that you ask yourself, your brain will go to work on. So asking your brain, is there an opportunity here, is going to produce very different answers than where is the opportunity here. Fun tangent for you to consider and chew on. Okay. So if you choose here again, and here's an actual fact. If you choose, this can be a major moment of opportunity, like this time that we're in right now at the time of this recording. And if you're listening to this like later, this probably still applies. Did you know that General Motors, Spotify, Airbnb, Disney, actually my company, many of my friends' companies, all of these companies were born in times of recessionary economies? Every single one of these companies. I could tell you even more. FedEx. I mean, there's so many. There's so many. Okay, this is a time we're in right now of wealth exchange. And here's the thing, the way that you relate to your thoughts could be the difference between being on the receiving end of the wealth exchange or the losing end. Your thoughts, the way that you interpret the facts of the situation, it all boils down to that. So you want to start to identify what your thoughts are and realize that you can choose them as they come up, and realize that no, you are not your thoughts. In fact, it's possible to even giggle at them. And let me just share from my own experience, just to make this like a little bit more tangible and grounded so it doesn't feel like theory esoteric. Okay. So, our thoughts come out, like I said, of beliefs, which come out of the time in our lives when we were kids. So when we're kids, we develop this worldview. We develop this filter through which we see things. This sort of like, this is how the world is. What happens is, we develop beliefs which actually form into personality traits, character traits. Let me give you an example of this from myself. This is like on my dark side. Okay. Cause I know this will make a difference for you. It'd be one thing. I can share all the happy news about myself all day long, but for me to share part of my dark side, you're going to be like, oh, I'm like that too. And this will make the much bigger difference for you. So there's a part of me that I've worked really intensely on transforming, which is very selfish. Okay. And just again, to go back to what was happening between the ages of 0 and 8. Well, when I was younger, my younger sister was diagnosed with cancer, and we almost lost her. And thank God she's here with us today. Like, praise the Lord. She's happy and great and fine. I was texting with her this morning. All is good. But in that time, my mom, she was in the hospital for 2 years. My mom was in the hospital with her. My dad was always at work, and I pretty much raised myself. So I developed a worldview, and I developed a belief about myself and about the world that if Julie doesn't focus on Julie, if Julie doesn't take care of Julie and like not really focus on other people, Julie will not be okay. And that formed into this selfish trait of Julie comes first. And then it's really, truly, and this is going to sound dramatic, but it really is like, if Julie doesn't come first, Julie will die. I mean, that is how that part of our brain, that is how our very like primitive childlike self thinks and operates. So the trait and the belief and the thought turns into actions, turns into how I treat other people, turns into how I behave in group environments. I'll tell you a story that might sound very innocuous, but it completely comes out of the selfish trait. I went to this Mexican restaurant down the street with my boyfriend, and we'd heard all about it. It's like the talk of the town. Hadn't been there, even though I've lived here for a while. We were like, okay, let's go try it out. So it's the kind of restaurant where you go to the counter and you order, and then you go get like your silverware and napkins and drinks and, salsas and condiments and things like that. And you go sit down. And so we went and got our beverages and our silverware and stuff. And I picked up a fork and a knife and a napkin. And he looks at me and he was like, what about me? Meaning, what about my fork and knife and napkin? And like this trait, I giggle because this trait it just shows you how very hardwired it is in me that it didn't even occur to me to pick up 2 forks and knives and napkins. And so like, because I've worked so much on this trait, when he said that, I don't get defensive. I don't get upset. I don't get, the way some people can. And believe me, that used to be me. No, I giggle and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so selfish. I'm so sorry. And then I get the fork and the knife and the napkin and we move on. I know that sounds like a small thing, but guess what? It's those small things that build up in your romantic relationship, in your teams that you work with, in your family. Those small things build up and turn into big things. I know you know what I'm talking about. And it turns into like, next thing you know, we're fighting over passing the salt. And it wasn't really about passing the salt. It was about things like this that built up over time that never got handled or acknowledged or addressed. It all boils down to this. That's just a real life example. So you can take situations like that, something small like that, or something bigger, like a massive breakdown, right? It doesn't matter. You can reverse engineer a situation to find out what your subconscious beliefs actually are. So let's bring it to money for a second. Okay. So let's just say hypothetically, let's say you're like, I want to make $100,000 in revenue this year. And then immediately watch, did you see what happened in your brain? Your thoughts immediately go, but, okay, whatever follows the but will show you what your beliefs are. The belief might be, I don't have what it takes. It might be, I don't know how. It might be, people who make 6 figures are greedy. Okay, so if you believe this and you have these thoughts, you won't take the action to get there. You won't get the results. And then you'll keep wondering why you're not there yet. And you get to keep being right about why you're not there yet, and the justifications and the thoughts. And then it's like a vicious cycle. And that's why we have to start with the beliefs. We start with the beliefs, and then we work, and then the thoughts transform, and then the actions transform, and then the results transform. Okay. So like, let's just like bring this to reality again for a second. I had a belief growing up that being successful and being in business meant one had to basically sacrifice their soul and be entirely inauthentic and unhappy and disconnected, because that's my interpretation. Again, notice my language there, my interpretation, not the facts of the situation, my interpretation of how my dad was. My interpretation was, right, like my mom and sister at the hospital, like, they're doing that. My dad comes home with his briefcase and in his suit, and he just looks very tired, and he sits on the couch and he watches TV, and he's not emotionally connected to the rest of the family. And unsurprisingly, I'm sure you can predict, my parents divorced, and it just kind of like the family broke. So I made up that, you know what, I'd rather be, if this is what success and money looks like, I would rather be broke and happy. That's what I made up about that situation. So obviously that played out when it came to my career choices. That played out when it came to like the people I hung out with. It played out. Okay. Now, all of that shifted when I met someone extraordinary. I was living in Hong Kong. I was getting my master's degree in marine biology because I only made $20,000 US a year in my studentship. But hey, I got to wear like comfortable clothes and go out on the boat and photograph dolphins. And like, that was my version of, again, I'd rather be broke than happy, broke and happy. Do you see how I lived into that? Okay. So I was invited on this like boat thing. And while I was on the boat thing, I met this amazing woman. And this amazing woman, she still is, this is 15 years later, she's still one of my best friends. She's an entrepreneur. She owns her own wedding dress company, and she has a ready to wear clothes too, but she's really most known for her beautiful vintage looking antique, extraordinarily feminine wedding dresses. And she herself dresses just immaculately feminine, beautiful. She's like a whimsical fairy. Like she is just as feminine as it gets. And at that time, I would have been in like my mid-20s. She would have been in her late 20s, and she was a multimillionaire running this multi-locational global fashion brand. Okay, so wait a minute. So here's this woman who's highly successful, highly influential, and as like joyful and feminine and authentic as it gets. And what happened for me was mind-blowing moment of like paradigm shift. And I had the opportunity to formulate a new belief. Like, wait a minute, maybe I can be successful and feminine and happy and authentic all at the same time. At which point, yes, I finished my degree, but immediately pivoted into what would it look like to have an actual goal of making great money doing something I loved. And I don't do this anymore, but I started all of this many years ago as a yoga teacher. I started and I decided, I was like, I'm going to do things differently. So I'll go into my actual details of this story in another show, but suffice it to say, when I graduated grad school and I went into entrepreneurship, in my first 6 months as a yoga teacher, for 6 months, I made $90,000. That's obviously not a normal yoga teacher salary because, right, multiply that times 2. Now you have an annual salary of $120,000. That's not a normal yoga teacher salary. I hit my first million in business by the time I was 30, and I've only grown since then. Do you see how the change in belief turned into a change in thought, which turned into a change in action, which turned to a change in result? Okay, so now we're going to talk about some daily practices and habits that you can start doing so that you can shift your beliefs, your inner narrative, your thoughts, your self-talk, so that you can experience your version of the transformation. Now, I must say, disclaimer, your self-talk and your beliefs, they won't change overnight. They really won't. And it's unrealistic to think that they will. This is like you're forming a new habit. You're flexing a new muscle. You're creating new neural pathways. You're creating a new mountain of evidence that, yes, the world can operate this way. So are you ready? Okay, here we go. You're going to want to take notes and write this down. The first thing you're going to want to do is get acquainted with what you are actually telling yourself. Here's the thing. You don't even realize the loops that you have going on in your head. Okay. So the loops could sound something like, I don't have time. There isn't enough time in a day. I'm not supported. My team will never do what I say. Nobody does things as well as I do. Hint, these are some of my loops that I worked on. So if you have a similar personality as me, you might have some similar loops, or you might have different loops. Like, I don't have the confidence. I never have, and I never will. Or like, sales has never worked for me. It's things like this. You have to find out what it is for you. Start to notice them. And what you're going to want to do is start tracking them, start writing them down. So just to put this into very concrete structure, you can ask yourself the question, so let's say you realize that you have a loop of, I'm not supported. Like, this is a loop I worked on. I'm not supported. So what I did for 2 weeks was I asked myself every day, where did I feel I wasn't supported? And I started to write down at least 3 things every day. Okay. Maybe yours is, I don't have what it takes. Where did I feel I didn't have what it takes? And look, I'm not going to say it's easy. Like, it's a little bit painful to start to acknowledge and identify the reality and confront what you are actually saying to yourself every day. But the thing is, you're saying it to yourself anyway. So wouldn't you rather have a different relationship with it and be free of it? So when you start tracking it, you start to shift your relationship with it. Right? Even to go back to the selfish trait that I told you about, I started tracking, where was I selfish today? Maybe it was there was one I can think of where as simple as I was in a meeting, there was somebody who made a mistake, but it wasn't their fault. And I didn't speak up because I'd rather cover my ass than take care of the other person. That was selfish. And I got to that was something I tracked. So do that for 2 weeks. And then what happens after that is you start to identify and become very aware. And awareness is power. After that, you can start telling yourself a new story. What would be a new belief or a new, powerful paradigm that is, so instead of I can only be unhappy and successful, or broke and happy, what about I can be happy and successful? I'm not saying you're going to believe it immediately. I'm just saying you can choose it, and then you'll start to live into it as you start to focus on that instead of the old beliefs. It takes discipline, it takes focus, but it works. It really, really works. And you can write this down in your journal. Another thing you can do is you can send this podcast to a friend to give them the same context, and then you listen to it together, and then you send emails to each other. So what I do is I send, when I'm always tracking, I'm always bettering myself. I'm tracking a new trait right now. Okay. So I send my emails I send all of this to my coach. Yes, I have a coach. I send all of this to my coach. I'm in accountability. I'm not just doing it in my own secret world. It's I'm in relationship. I'm in accountability. So maybe you have a coach and you want to do this with them. Send them this podcast. So you can be this is what I want to do. And they're okay, awesome. Got it. Let's go. Or maybe you have an accountability buddy, or maybe you have a best friend or a girlfriend or a sister, and you want to send this to them, and you guys do this together. And you do it together, because there's a power in that. There really is. It's actually pretty cool when you can start to share, oh, I just had this realization. It's pretty neat. Okay. So again, what you believe, you prove. At the end of the day, you really do get to choose. What do you desire to prove? Let me say this another way. What do you want to be right about? What do you want to be right about? Do you want to be right about the fact that, yes, you can transform. Yes, you can make the money you want to make. Yes, you can heal that relationship with your mom. Yes, you can, attract your soulmate partner. Or do you want to be right that you can't? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be right about something, and you really do get to choose. And I really hope that opens something up for you and inspires you on a whole new possibility. Okay. I'm one of many examples of this being true, and I know it's true for you too. So What is the next step? Identify a belief or trait you want to shift for 2 weeks or even 1 week. At the end of every day, ask yourself, where was I? And find 3 examples. And like I said, if you want to be accountable and have fun with this, send this episode to your person. It is so fun and freeing when you can start to finally giggle at yourself. Giggling at yourself and having a forgiving relationship with these parts of yourself, these dark parts of yourself, doesn't mean that you're approving of the thoughts or approving of the traits that don't work or even hurt other people. It just means that now you have grace and forgiveness with yourself. It means that you can take the shame off of it so you can finally really look at yourself and really truly finally be free. All right. Okay. If this episode made a difference for you, I do have a favor to ask of you, which is that you subscribe. Okay. It makes such a difference. And I so appreciate you for it. And bonus points if you're willing to leave a review. Make sure to go follow me on Instagram, Julie Serot, and Facebook, also Julie Serot, for all the behind the scenes of what I've got going on. And I will see you in the next episode of Feminine Fortune.